let's move on to other news now. So the Financial Action Task Force's announcement that South Africa completed all grey list reforms has been widely welcomed. This is over the lack of compliance with international standards around the prevention of money laundering and the financing of terror. But let's get reaction to this. We discussed this with Pan-African Investment and Research Chief Economist, Dr Iraj Abedian. Dr Abedian, a good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us. First glance, this sounds like really good news. We went into grey listing in February 2023. Just your views on what we're looking like then for October 2025.
Good evening, Naledi, to you and to our viewers. I think it is indeed a good news, not only because it's one of the two important corrective actions that government had to take to put the South African financial sector to become a normal member of the international financial community, but also reduce the cost of capital coming in and going out of the country. And the second good news about it is that usually countries take between 5 to 6 to 7 years to get off this grey list status, if you like. And South Africa has managed to do it almost in 2 years or 2.5 years. And that's indeed a kudo to the government and especially to the Minister of Finance and National Treasury.
Yeah, just for the benefit of the viewer, Dr. Abedian, I mean, these 22 action items that we were required really to, I suppose, tighten in order to get out of that grey listing, as we hope that we will be later on in the year. What would those have looked like? And of course, maybe lessons that we take from them on how to, solidify our financial systems moving forward.
I think, Naledi, generally, without going to too much of the technical details, generally depends on, it relates to various categories of identifying financial abuse, financial malfeasance, both in private and public sector, having borders that are properly controlled in terms of cash and cash equivalent coming in and out. And by cash equivalent, I mean precious metals or any other financial instrument, or something that can be cashed. But importantly, and perhaps the most important, is when somebody is caught in private or public sector, how quickly our national prosecuting agency and with what level of consistency it pursues those people who are engaged in this kind of abuses of financial sector. So that then in those kind of environment, what the banking sector does, how well do they know their clients, when money is transferred, what type of approval is needed, and how much cash is allowed to be carried around, and the court system, especially with respect to identification and enforcement of existing legislation. Of course, as we all know, we come from an embarrassing 10 years, if not longer, of a state capture, where both private and public sector players, with the support of possibly the highest office in the country, they were having a free hand, and National Prosecuting Agency was incapable of enforcing, identifying, and bringing into account those who had done the wrongdoing. We are thinking of people like Marcus Huster and his team in the private sector. We can think of a number of players in Zondo Commission and much smaller people within the spectrum of large to medium to mega abuses of financial sectors. That's basically what it's about. It's about, does the country have a credible detection agency or systems? And when something is detected and identified, does the country have law enforcement agencies that are capable, competent, and efficient to deter financial abuse?
Yeah, and I'm going to sit with the tail end of that one then, because I mean that really is where perhaps there might be some concern. I'm keen to hear if you have concern there. Just look at the conversation in the past few weeks around the work of the National Prosecuting Authority. I'm just seeing, and perhaps you can, some of this data, perhaps if I miss it somewhere, help me out with it. But I believe that you had the Financial Intelligence Center that received over 7 million suspicious transaction reports, and yet only 300 led to formal investigations or prosecutions. So 300 out of 7.5 million suspicious transactions. And I don't know what you make of that, and the confidence that you have then in the NPA. Certainly as you start to have some of the difficulties around even the leadership of the NPA now becoming a big talking point in South Africa.
Yeah, Naledi, you put your finger on it. And over the past 5 years that I've been involved and the nation has been involved in this very issue of NPA's effectiveness, it's quite clear that NPA not only was hollowed out during those state capture years, and they don't have the capacity, human resources that is fit for purpose. But as importantly, the authorities in NPA have been at pain to point out that the legislative environment within which they have to enforce the law is way out of line with the current technological as well as social, political, ethical system. Basically, it is not up to standard. And are they working damn hard? Yes. Do they have the legal environment, regulatory environment that allows them to go faster, quicker, and more effectively? The answer is no. In that regard, it's the cabinet and the parliament that they need to sit down and say, look, let's upgrade, let's revise, let's create the institutions. On the one hand, capacitate them, give them resources, but at the same time, you can have the most resourceful agency if the regulatory and the environment that within which they have to operate is not conducive to efficient operation. Capable people cannot do it on themselves or by themselves. So I think those are the issues that the parliament, in my view, over the past 3 years, and the cabinet more specifically, and in this regard, Minister of Justice and the President have not been doing NPA the required political support to enable them to operate at the same time that, of course, they need more resources.
So that's one institution that, perhaps needs some reinforcement. But is there institutional infrastructure that we can look at as models from other countries that solidifies us against another greylisting? And perhaps, in fact, what we should do is actually talk about what the greylisting has cost the country since 2023, which is incredibly important. What does this greylisting actually do to us? And perhaps examples from other countries of the sort of institutional infrastructure that you need then to safeguard.
I think, Naledi, in that regard, it's tempting to say, look at United States, look at UK, look at Singapore, look at some other very successful countries like Northern Europeans, Norway, Denmark, etc., etc. Those are the countries that we should aspire to learn from. At the same time, we are a developing country, we are an emerging economy, and we need to make sure that we align ourselves with the resources that we have. It's very difficult from where we come from to have the same effective machinery that, let's say, Norway has. But Norway's success is not just about a good NPA equivalent that we can copy. It's also the culture, the culture of political economy within the society, the culture of where we come from. And that's, in my view, as important as learning from Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Singapore about how to treat malfeasance, financial abuse and corruption, and very importantly, abuse of political office or abuse of office both in private and public sector. It's the promotion of a culture of compliance, a culture of ethics, a culture of respect for the office that you hold and the oath that you take. And that culture has been badly diluted. Look at our municipalities, look at our provincial administrations, look at our national administrations. They are very quick to take oaths, but a minute later they forget, because that culture, that appreciation of the political economy, morality has been diluted badly. So we need to be very careful not to just minimize the importance of financial probity and compliance to simply institutions and courts and an effective NPA. Important as they are. I'm not diminishing the importance of that, but equally, we need to put a lot of emphasis at the national level for political economy, ethics, morality of holding public office in both private and public sector.
Yeah, lots to think about as we get closer, of course, to seeing that visit by the FATF Africa Joint Group before the plenary. That will then tell us if South Africa does get out of greylisting. Thank you so much, though, to Dr Iraj Abedian, who is Chief Economist at Pan-African Investment and Research.